which sounds to me like treasonous.
Treasonous is defined as a betrayal of trust as well as aiding and abetting the enemy. And so that was the word that came to my mind.
Things are accelerating fast. Trump as a racist became Trump as a traitor, which has now become Trump as a non-person who must be erased from our collective memory. The left is officially out of epithets. All that's left is physical harm. Who will be the first to call for that? It feels inevitable at this point. Mark Stein is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. So what do you make of annulling the Trump presidency, Mark?
Well, I think this is rather like the famous episode of Dallas, where after they wrote off an entire season as not having gone anywhere, and Pam Ewing stepped into the shower, and there was Bobby Ewing, who was supposed to be dead, restored to life. And Robert Reich seems to basically be proposing the same solution here, that Robert Reich will step into the shower, and there will be President Hillary Clinton magnificently. I hope that's not a bit too vivid for you. Actually, as I was halfway through that image, it suddenly got a bit too vivid for me. But that does actually reflect the level of denial here. If you recall, going back to November 2016, we heard all this stuff about, America is unique in having the peaceful transfer of power, which I don't quite accept. I mean, generally speaking, when they get a new prime minister in Denmark, they don't throw the old one off the parliament building or anything. There are other countries that have peaceful transfers of power.
Yes,
what's interesting here is that actually they can't accept that, and the denialism, which back a year and a half ago was just like with fake Newsweek covers showing the rightful president, is now extending to former cabinet secretaries actually arguing for the erasure of the historical record and sort of resetting things to year zero, and actually that is harmful to the so-called peaceful transfer of power, and in that sense, Reich should be ashamed of himself.
So, but that's kind of the key. Here you have not just some pundit on MSCNN or whatever, but here you have a former cabinet secretary and a well-regarded one. I mean, I know him, and he is a legitimately smart guy. And then a former CIA director who's not a legitimately smart guy, but still a former CIA director. I mean, these are the pillars of the establishment. What is it, macro question, about Trump that drives the ruling class to say things like this, irrational things, crazy things?
Well, I think there is a general presumption that it's not just that he won, but that he shouldn't have won. And therefore, because he shouldn't have won, he cannot really have won. And that's why you have to have this basically this dance of speculation. Now, the treason accusation, I think, is actually, for a start, treason is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and actually Russia isn't the enemy at the moment. In fact, it was President Obama who mocked the very idea that Russia was even a sort of geopolitical rival of any kind. So we're not at war with Russia. The idea that that is actually possible of rising to the level of treason is faintly absurd. But I think it's the need to delegitimize, and a couple of cycles ago that just meant mocking the other guy as being stupid and being unworthy of it and all the rest of it. But it's actually gone on to something far more dangerous, which is actually delegitimizing the entire system. When you have major political figures saying that, in effect, the peaceful transfer of power is not possible, it can't possibly happen, therefore, if it does happen, it's illegitimate, it's not so much this or that president that they're delegitimizing, but actually the very possibility of civilized self-government by
exactly. People. So if the supposed adults on the left, Reich and Brennan and many others, are talking themselves into this frenzy where each round becomes more extreme than the last, how long before someone convinces himself that, we need to storm the White House, we need to take action, like physical action here? That's the terminus of this, right? How could it not be?
Well, that's what makes this at a certain level ridiculous. I mean, for Bill Maher, just before that, bit with Brennan, said that this was the third biggest crisis in America's history. The Revolutionary War, and then the Civil War, and now this. Well, what are you doing about it, Bill? You're having another decaf macchiato and finding another Canadian singer-songwriter to date. You're not pledging your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor, are you? And by the way, speaking of treason, if he is dating another Canadian singer-songwriter, that's like George Washington dating a United Empire loyalist at the time of the Revolutionary War. So he's not even serious about what he's saying. And that's what makes it decadent. If either this is, as Bill Maher says, the third great crisis in American history, or it's just something you guys are talking about over your Sauvignon Blanc for a giggle. But exactly. if they're not serious about it, they shouldn't be saying it, because somebody will take it seriously. And that's the real danger.
Meanwhile, the middle class dies and nobody cares. Mark Stein, thank you very much for that. Great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
So is it legal, is it even possible to annul a presidency? Julian Epstein is a Democrat and former counsel to the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us now. So, Julian, I have noticed that the left has become more than anything a religious movement, and the use of the term annulment kind of proves it. If the presidency were annulled, as Reich suggests, would heretics who persist on acknowledging that Trump was once president, would they be punished?
It's a funny way to put the question. I don't think annulment is a serious argument. I don't think we're at the threshold of impeachment yet. I think there is a tendency going on with Democrats right now, as there was during the '98 Clinton impeachment, for people in the opposition party to scream loud and to try to get an attention, and to scream kind of louder than the other, because it helps with clicks on websites and it helps get them on television. But I don't think it's a serious argument.
But it's a different. So you and I had many debates during impeachment.
'98,
so long we've known each other. And there were people who were claiming that Bill Clinton murdered someone at Mena Airport. And, there was a lot of that stuff. But it wasn't coming.
Vince Foster.
For sure. But it wasn't coming from former cabinet secretaries.
Dan Burton.
Okay, you had a member of Congress who had all kinds of theories, but he was embarrassed of those theories. And when confronted with them, he's like, oh, I didn't really think that. Here you have pillars of the Democratic establishment saying on television things that are so far out and extreme, I'm not even sure how to respond to them. Does that make you uncomfortable?
I don't know if he's a pillar of the Democratic establishment. I think he was a labor secretary under Clinton, and I think he's a very good economist. I think he's a sharp thinker as an economist. He is not a lawyer, and I don't think he's a legal scholar, and I think he'd probably do better staying away from that. I think there were plenty of Republican members of Congress that said very extremist things during Clinton impeachment. So I think it happens on both sides. It's a natural thing that occurs.
I don't think anybody
accused
Bill Clinton of treason. So here you have
people accuse Bill Clinton of murder.
But not in public. I mean, they sort of whispered about it. But you didn't have, for example, a former head of the CIA. Does it bother you, actually, that John Brennan, who was complimented by Republicans, by the way, when he first got in, I'll concede that, but he was the head of the CIA, and now he's accusing a political opponent of a death penalty offense with no evidence. Does it bother you that he ran the most powerful intelligence agency in the world?
Well, I think what Brennan was referring to, and people use treason in different ways. People sometimes use treason in a legal sense, and sometimes people use treason in a more vernacular sense. And I think what Brennan was talking about was Trump continually cozying with Putin, who I think most Republicans would agree is an enemy of the United States.
Well, I wouldn't
an opponent of the United States.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, he's certainly no more bloodthirsty than lots of Middle Eastern tyrants.
I think if you look at what he's done with the airliners, I think if he's done in Crimea and Syria, I don't think he's a guy that's looking out for U.S. interests.
No, of course he's not looking out for U.S. interests. I think he would undermine U.S. interests. So would a lot of countries.
That was the point. But look, I think you can go back and forth. We could go back, as we did in '98, and you go back. You can find extremists on both sides who will say things that, again, I think are designed to get attention, get on television, get clickbait for the things.
Sure, but then you also, and what you're saying is absolutely right, but you also have people like, I don't know, the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, who on this show accused me of carrying water for Putin because I had sincere questions about the evidence of collusion. So you do have a kind of different level of extremism, I would argue, but it leads to this question, which is, if Trump is guilty of these crimes that virtually everyone on the left alleges, then why aren't we just saying out loud, there's an impeachment coming? Why are Democrats ashamed of that?
As to the question of extremism, there's a lot of extremism going on both sides. And I hope, as a thoughtful guy that you are, that you would denounce it, the extremism that's occurring on the right. I denounce the extremism that's occurring on the left. I think the Robert Reich article was ridiculous. That's the first point. The second point is not everybody on the left is saying Trump is guilty of crimes. I don't think there's proof yet that Trump is guilty of crimes. I think the question on campaign finance, as we were discussing before we came on air, I don't think that reaches an impeachable offense, and I think it's questionable as whether it reaches a legal offense because of the ambiguity of campaign finance laws. We can talk about that more.
No, well, of course, I agree.
I think
completely.
The question on collusion rests entirely on whether Trump had advanced knowledge of any illegal activity that was connected to Russian hacking. That has not been proven yet. So this Democrat is not alleging a crime as it involves Donald Trump.
But you know as well as I that the pressure, and the polls bear this out, the pressure from Democratic voters to impeach if Democrats retake the House will be so overwhelming that what speaker could look at the people who just put him or her in that position and say, you know, we're not impeaching?
Well, what I was going to say, one of the reasons that I think there's so much pressure around these investigations is how badly the Trump White House has handled the Russian investigation matter. It looks at every turn that they are trying to cover up crimes, whether it is the firing, the threatened firings, the promises of pardons, all of the flipping of the witness. The accountant has flipped on the president. His attorney has flipped on the president. Campaign manager. The poor way, and Giuliani
is looking guilty the same as being guilty?
No, it's not. Not in a legal. Okay. No, Tucker. Not in a legal world, but in a political way. You know as well as I do that the actions of this White House have looked guilty from the beginning. Has made them look guilty. It doesn't mean that they're guilty in a legal sense, but it has been handled horribly. Okay. Now, if the Democrats, where the Democrats ought to be, and what I would argue, and I've spoken to Democrats on the Hill, is they should not be coming to legal conclusions or conclusions about impeachment at this point.
But can they resist
what
impeachment?
They should be,
can they, their voters
if they're
want it?
Smart. Well, this is the problem with the polarized politics as we play to the extreme bases. And Republicans do this, I think, I would argue, more so than Democrats do. But we can disagree about that.
I don't see that at all.
We can disagree about that. But if Democrats were smart, they would tell the base that we're not going to kind of kowtow to the impulses that may make you feel better emotionally. We're going to do what you and I would probably agree ought to be done here. Listen to the point.
If you can find one Democratic leader, look, I agree with you. Of course,
Democratic leadership.
If you can find one Democratic leader with the huevos to say something like that on television, I'll give you $20.
Well, I think that's basically what the Democrats are saying in other words. And what the Democrats ought to be saying, Tucker, is
we're almost at time.
We're not going to make conclusions about impeachment. We're not going to make conclusions about prosecution. We want facts to come out. We want to protect the independent counsel and all the other investigations that are underway. We should protect the integrity of the investigation.
Then they should tell the treason
and allow
chorus
the
to
facts
shut up.
and allow the facts to come out.
All right.
And you ought to be there, and I ought to be there, and we ought to say, let's make a decision.
I've been saying that since day one. I'm just totally. It's been 2 years.
But are you for the Republican plan, the Senate bipartisan Republican plan that protects the
for running the government
counsel?
and like rescuing the middle class from oblivion?
Well,
what about
the Grassley bill that would protect the special counsel?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think we should have any special counsels of any kind. It's unaccountable to the voters.
But now that there's an investigation, do you think the integrity
I just want it to go away and think about why. No, I'm serious. And think about why 70,000 people died of drug overdose last year. There's like real stuff going on.
But you just said that you think the integrity of the investigation ought to be protected.
Right. I think I asked. Look, it's just the whole thing is so stupid. I've run out of patience for it. But that's not why I asked you to come on tonight. Julian, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
Multiple investigations into Russia's interference in our election still haven't proved that Moscow colluded with Trump. So how long can an investigation that has turned up no actual evidence continue? That's ahead. We'll also have the latest on the recent news surrounding the death of Senator John McCain and the political furor it touched off in Washington today. Stay tuned.
Allergies can stand in the way of enjoying the moment. Break through with Allegra, the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief. In just 1 hour, it starts tackling tough allergy symptoms for 24 hours of relief. Get back to the moment with Allegra.
Folks, if you look out your window, we're flying over IHOP's delicious international pancake combos.
Sweet tres leches.
Pancakes. Let's back this thing up and take another look.
Go on a pancation with international pancakes at IHOP, starting at $4.99.
I get it all the time. Have you lost weight? Of course I have. Ever since I started renting from National. Because National lets me lose the weight at the counter and choose any car in the aisle. And I don't wait when I return, thanks to Drop and Go. At National, I can lose the weight and keep it off.
Looking good, Patrick!
I know. Go National. Go like a pro.
I've seen lots of homes helping new customers bundle and save big. But now, it's time to find my dream abode.
Right away, I could tell his priorities were a little unorthodox.
Keep going. Stop. A little bit down. Stop. Back up again. Is this adequate sunlight for a Komodo dragon?
Yeah.
Sure, I want that discount on car insurance just for owning a home, but I'm not compromising.
You're taking a shower?
Water pressure's crucial, Scott. It's like they say, location, location, koi pond.
They don't say that.
At Safe Light Auto Glass, we really pride ourselves on making it easy for you to get your windshield fixed.
Let's turn in your science papers.
This teacher always puts her students first.
I did mine on You did? Oh, I can't wait to read it.
So when she had auto glass damage, she chose Safe Light. With Safe Light, she could see exactly when we'd be there.
You must be Pascal.
Yes, ma'am. Saving her time. So she can save the science project.
Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace.
How can we say when you book direct at choicehotels.com, you always get the lowest price in our rooms, guaranteed?
Let's say it in a really low voice. Carl?
Lowest price guaranteed.
Just stick with bada book, bada boom.
Book now at choicehotels.com.
Need deep, long-lasting pain relief? Try Salon-Pa's Deep Relieving Gel. 3 powerful medicines penetrate and treat pain for up to 8 hours. Need faster relief? Try Salon-Pa's Jet Spray. Works on contact, freezing pain fast. Salon-Pa's.
Fox News Channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus, every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7 at Channel 115. Keeping faith in the president? After the Cohen bombshell, are evangelicals still supporting Trump? Pastor Robert Jeffress breaks it down with Shannon. Next, Fox News at Night.
I'm all about my bed.
This mattress is dangerously comfortable.
When I get in, I literally say, ah.
Introducing the Lisa mattress. A better place to sleep.
This bed hugs my body.
I'm now a morning person.
The Lisa mattress is designed to provide strong support, relieve pressure, and optimize airflow to keep you cool.
Hello, bed of my dreams.
Order online. We'll build it, box it, and ship it to your door for you to enjoy. Sleep on it for up to 100 nights and love it, or you'll get a full refund. Returns are free and easy.
I love my Lisa.
Today is gonna be great.
Read our reviews, then try the Lisa mattress in your own home. Order during our pre-Labor Day mattress sale and save. For a limited time, get $150 off and free shipping too. Sale prices are available right now. Go to buylisa.com today.
You need this bed.
Senator John McCain, who passed away this weekend at the age of 81, was a man of florid passions. He loved what he loved and he hated what he hated. High atop his dislike list was Donald Trump. McCain despised Trump. Trump, for his part, despised McCain right back. And to their credit, neither man ever pretended otherwise. McCain attacked Trump almost until his final day. After McCain died, Trump at first could barely bring himself to mourn. He sent a brief tweet and then raised the White House flags too soon for many critics. Now, the root of this dispute between Senator McCain and the president is murky. Each side has a different story. What's clear, though, is where the press stands in this.
To watch the president, with President Kenyatta of Kenya, twice, not saying anything about this hero, this lion of a man. It's despicable. It's despicable.
The president who repeatedly refused to say anything about a war hero, despite being asked today again and again and again.
How dare he? Well, there's been a lot of this today, almost exclusively from the left. On one level, it's amusing because these are the very same people, of course, who called John McCain a racist 10 years ago for daring to run against the anointed one. A month before that election in 2008, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia compared John McCain to George Wallace and then tried to connect him to the 1963 Birmingham church bombings, if you can imagine. Fast forward to this weekend, Lewis described McCain, probably the most hawkish senator in American history, as, quote, a warrior for peace. He will be deeply missed by people all around the world. In other words, never mind the racist stuff. It was never personal. For the left, everything is about political expedience, even obituaries. More troubling, though, more interesting, too, is the claim you just heard that it's, quote, despicable not to mourn Senator McCain in a certain way. Not just impolite, but immoral and forbidden. When people in authority, people with TV shows, for example, decide that they can dictate what emotions you're allowed to feel, you should worry. McCain knew that well. He spent 5.5 years as a captive in a society just like that, and he spent the rest of his life fighting against it. He hated authoritarians above all. John McCain was a complicated person, but a great man. If you really want to honor his memory, you ought to let people make up their own minds about what they think. Well, Justice Department official Bruce Ohr played a central role in the Obama administration's targeting and spying on the Trump campaign, feeding information from Christopher Steele to his contacts at the FBI. Tomorrow, we're going to learn more because he is set to testify behind closed doors to Congress. Who is Bruce Ohr? The Washington Examiner's Byron York has been covering this story from the very beginning and is, we think, one of the most trustworthy sources on it. So, Byron, I read the New York Times every day because I'm paid to, and I just read a piece saying that Bruce Ohr was an insignificant figure at the Justice Department. No one ever heard of him. Don't pay attention to Bruce Ohr. All of a sudden, he emerges as a central figure in the story. What am I to make?
Well, it read almost like a defense brief on the eve of his testimony. But Bruce Ohr was the fourth-ranking official in the Obama Justice Department. And one of the big questions that investigators in Congress have tried to find out about the dossier was, how high did knowledge of the dossier go in the Justice Department? Was it a few guys in the FBI? Did people above that know?
Yes.
And then above that? And so you've gotten to Bruce Ohr. Now, if the number 4 knew, did the number 3, did the number 2 know, and did the Attorney General know? Those are probably some of the questions that Ohr will be asked, unfortunately, behind closed doors tomorrow.
It's a little bit striking, though. You said that the piece about Bruce Ohr in the New York Times read like a defense brief. The story here is not just about President Trump and whatever crimes he's alleged to have committed. The story is about the Obama administration and whether or not one administration spied on an opposing political campaign using our intel agencies. Why wouldn't the press be anxious to know more about that, since it sets a pretty troubling precedent for future administrations?
Well, it does. And the whole idea is, what was the Obama administration doing with Christopher Steele, that former British spy who was hired by the Clinton campaign and the DNC to search for dirt in Russia on Donald Trump? What was the Justice Department doing about that? And one of the most fascinating aspects of all this, which Ohr will be asked about, is Steele was dying to get negative information about Trump into the press before the election, so it could affect the election. And he was not supposed to talk to the press, but he did.
By his own admission, by the way. This is not something you're assuming.
Correct. And this is known as a fact. He did it in September and in October of 2016, right before the election. So the FBI, this is really, really against the rules for FBI sources. So they terminated him as a source, but they wanted to keep using him. So what they did in the months after the election, all the way up to at least May of 2017, was have Bruce Ohr talk to Christopher Steele, then come back to the FBI and tell the FBI what Steele told him. And the FBI, by the way, made what are called 302 reports, which is they write up notes of interviews. They made them for each one of these things, and we don't know what they are because the Justice Department will not let Congress have them. They've let some members of Congress read them. And all of these are questions that the Congress is going to want to know, like, what did Christopher Steele tell you?
And I think the rest of us have a right to know. Because we have a right to trust our government. Byron York, great to see you. Thank you for that. Well, liberals have turned to corporations to censor people they disagree with. That's accelerating quickly. Where will it end? We're going to speak with a knowledgeable source on that next.
Before Nexium 24 Hour, Mark could only imagine a peaceful night's sleep without frequent heartburn waking him up. Now, that dream is a reality. Nexium 24 Hour stops acid before it starts for all-day, all-night protection. Can you imagine 24 hours without heartburn?
It's time for the biggest sale of the year on the new Sleep Number 360 smart bed. It senses your movement and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. And now all beds are on sale. Save 50% on the new Sleep Number 360 limited edition smart bed. Only for a limited time.
We pull people off the street and ask them about their hearts.
How's your heart?
Well, you know, my heart's pretty good.
You sure?
Yes, I think so.
How do you know? If you're driving a car, you have the check engine light, but the heart doesn't have a hey, check heart sign. I want to show you something. Put both fingers right on those pads. There you go. In 30 seconds, we're going to have a medical grade EKG reading. There it is. That is you.
Look at that.
With KardioMobile, the FDA-cleared personal EKG device, you can take a medical-grade EKG in just 30 seconds from anywhere. KardioMobile is proven to detect atrial fibrillation, one of the leading causes of stroke.
How much do you think this device costs?
Probably $1,000.
$1,000? $99.
Wow, that's impressive.
How great is it to have that peace of mind that at anywhere, anytime you can check?
It would be nice to really see my own heart whenever I wanted to.
KardioMobile puts peace of mind in your pocket for only $99. To order, visit KardioMobile.com. Also available on Amazon.
I'll shoot you an estimate as soon as I get back to the office. Hey, I can help you do that right now. Hi, Thrive.
Right.
Yep, I'm the all-in-one management software built for small business. Hi, Thrive.
Help me with scheduling?
Sure thing. Up top. Hi, Thrive.
Payments?
Hi, Thrive.
Promotions?
Hi, Thrive.
Email marketing?
Almost there. Hold on. Wait for it. Hi, Thrive.
Manage my customer list?
Can do, will do. Hi, Thrive.
Post on social media?
Hashtag Hi, Thrive, my friend. Get started for free at thrive.com.
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know how to cover almost anything, even vengeful vermin. Not so cute when they're angry. And we covered it. Talk to Farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Imagine feeling like this. The pure euphoria of getting a truly great deal on a truly great car at the Honda Summer Spectacular event. Imagine the exhilaration upon discovering the Honda Clarity Plug-in Hybrid runs on electric and has gas if you need it. But you don't have to imagine it.
We're used to it.
Because you can live it at the Honda Summer Spectacular event. Test drive the Honda Clarity Plug-in Hybrid today. A 2018 KBB.com Best Buy.
You eat healthy, take statins, but still struggle to lower your LDL bad cholesterol. You also have heart disease and fear a heart attack or stroke could strike without warning, pulling you away from everything you love. Because with high LDL, your risk of a heart attack or stroke is real. Now you can reduce that risk with Repatha. Repatha plus a statin dramatically lowers your LDL bad cholesterol by 63% and is proven to significantly drop your risk of having a devastating heart attack or stroke.
Do not take Repatha if you're allergic to it. Repatha may cause serious allergic reactions. Signs include redness, severe rash or itching, swollen face or trouble breathing. Most common side effects include runny nose, sore throat, common cold symptoms, flu or flu-like symptoms, back pain, high blood sugar, and redness, pain, or bruising at the injection site.
Don't let a heart attack or stroke come between you and everything you love. Tell your doctor you're ready to lower your LDL and reduce your risk for real with Repatha.
Pay no more than $5 per month with the Repatha copay card.
Well, the Bill of Rights is a stumbling block on the way to shutting down speech that the left doesn't like, at least in government. But there's a new avenue for those who would like to censor what you say and think, and that's corporations. The left have wised up to this. If you want to stop someone from telling the truth, use companies to do it, the social media giants, and they are. So far, the most prominent casualty of the crusade against free expression has been the radio show host Alex Jones. But are we smart to think censorship will stop with him? Mark Penn is a former advisor to Bill Clinton. He is a liberal who still believes in the free exchange of ideas, and he joins us tonight. So thank you, Mark, for coming on. So I'm fascinated by the Alex Jones story because it was Alex Jones. Almost no conservatives rose to his defense because the idea was, well, Alex Jones, ew, yuck. But it's not really about Alex Jones, is it? It's about the idea that companies can make it impossible for your voice to be heard. Is that a precedent we should be comfortable with?
Well, I really think you have to be worried about big tech becoming Big Brother.
Yes.
Because these used to be neutral platforms that said, we're open to free expression, that's our core value. And now they've said, well, not so much. with particularly Facebook hiring 10,000 new censors on top of another 10,000 and having roving censoring bots looking for content. Look, I never read Alex Jones, but here's somebody with millions of followers, publicly accountable for his speech, operating within Supreme Court standards, yanked from the media. That's a surprise to me. That says that these platforms are no longer as open as they presented themselves to be.
And it's not just him. There are many like him who've been yanked, lesser known, but still. So this has political implications. You ran and managed campaigns for so long. This must have occurred. A lot of our political debate takes place on social media platforms. So if they clamp down on one side of the debate, why wouldn't that influence an election's outcome?
Well, obviously it could have a big influence on elections, increasingly because where people turn for their news is that they look at the news feeds that are run by the major social media companies. And so they're more powerful than any TV station, more powerful than Fox.
Yes, they are.
Because of the amount of time that people spend, and it's a funnel. So if you're not at the top, you don't get seen. And so in the past, they had some neutral ways of doing this, but now they've increasingly applied still more mysterious algorithms plus individual censors. And remember, they're private platforms, they say, so they're not actually subject to the First Amendment unless we get some legislation here that says free speech is an internet right.
It's totally meaningless. If I own a toll road, I can't say anyone of a certain race can't drive on my toll road. And so they're not actually fully private companies. We have a public interest, I would say, in keeping them free and open. Why aren't, if you cared about the integrity of our elections, why isn't Congress acting?
I don't know why Congress isn't acting. Part of it is because to stand up to a social media company means you could have 5 million people on your doorstep the next day. So I think there's been a lot of intimidation in Congress instead of bipartisan agreement that, hey, we cannot have this kind of regulation of speech where whoever runs one of the big platforms can pick out speech, which speech goes and which speech doesn't. Not when they've been exempted from the libel laws, when they've been set up as open platforms, and they now become media companies instead. And that's exactly what's happened. They become media companies that take ads on the media that they run, and they have editors and algorithms and bots that run it.
I really believe that 10 years from now, this segment, what you just said, will be seen as prescient. I mean, I think it's a big story that's being ignored by virtually everyone for reasons I don't fully understand. Maybe you're right, it's cowardice, but it shouldn't be. Mark Penn, thank you for that.
Thank you.
The Chinese government plans to rank all 1.4 billion of its citizens according to their political reliability. That's pretty great. Up next, details.
If you have psoriasis, little things can be a big deal. That's why there's Otezla. Otezla is not a cream. It's a pill that treats moderate to severe plaque psoriasis differently. With Otezla, 75% clearer skin is achievable. Don't use if you're allergic to Otezla. It may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts, or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Tell your doctor about your medicines and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla, show more of you.
There's no limit to what you can achieve. And now there's no limit to how. Introducing Purdue University Global, a public online university for working adults.
People are raving about the 14-minute workout on the Bowflex Max Trainer.
It's a great full-body workout.
It's unbelievable, and you will feel it.
Oh, I love it. Max is the fastest workout I've ever done.
The Max Trainer is a 14-minute total body workout that sets targets to guide you, so you can burn more calories and get results like she did, and he did, and she did. Act now and save $350, including free shipping. Order now at trymaxnow.com.
In an era of online retail where everything is just a few clicks away, buying a car should be no different. That's why at Carvana, you can buy a car 100% online. We made it easy to browse, view, and buy from over 10,000 cars. You can even trade in your old car, all while binge watching your favorite TV show. Afterwards, we'll deliver your car to you. Or you can pick it up from one of our car vending machines. Either way, your car comes with a 7-day return policy. So grab a seat, relax in your comfy pants, and enjoy the new way to buy a car at Carvana.
Time. It shouldn't be measured by clocks. It should be measured by how long steak and lobster is back at Outback. Backed by popular demand, steak and lobster starting at $15.99. And time is limited, so hurry in today. Outback Steakhouse. Aussie rules.
After walking 6 miles at an amusement park, Bill's back needed a vacation from his vacation. So he stepped on the Dr. Scholl's kiosk. It recommends our best custom-fit orthotic to relieve foot, knee, or lower back pain, so you can move more. Dr. Scholl's, born to move.
How we see, how we look. Great eyewear is all about both. Thoughtful design. Precision optics. Styles people love. At Zenni.com, we make it all stunningly affordable. So you can see the world the way it's meant to be seen. In perfect focus. Zenni.com. Eyewear for everyone.
Ha! That will never work. Oh, no. A bulb of light.
A flying machine? Impossible.
A personal computer.
Smart neighborhoods running on a microgrid.
A stadium powered with solar.
A hospital that doesn't lose power.
It's amazing.
I like it.
Never gonna happen.
Impossible. That will never work.
Never gonna happen.
This is the ocean.
Oh, let's swim together in the water, clear and clean. It makes
Just listen.
us feel better.
There's so much we want to show her. We needed a car that would last long enough to see it all.
Subaru Outback. 98% are still on the road after 10 years. Right now, get 0% APR financing on the 2018 Subaru Outback.
Nearly 1 out of every 5 human beings on the planet lives in China. That's almost 1.4 billion people total. To give you some sense of scale, the United States has less than 0.4 billion total. There's a lot of people. Now the Communist Chinese government wants to give every single one of these people a ranking. Chinese officials plan to use technology to collect and analyze people for their new social credit system, which will then allow the government to administer punishment and, of course, hand out rewards, the carrot and the stick, based on good and bad behavior. Political obedience, of course, will be central to this. It's basically naughty and nice, but there's no Santa in this calculation. What does this mean, and could it come here? Gordon Chang is author of The Coming Collapse of China, and he joins us tonight. Gordon, thank you very much for coming on. So this is such a dystopian vision that a government could exert this level of social control over a population this large. It's hard to believe this could happen. Is this actually going to happen?
Well, it certainly is happening right now. What we have in China is that there's so many people there, of course. The government wants to control them, and so what they're doing is they're collecting data. They're collecting data from 600 million cameras that they'll have in place in 2020. They're going to have, traffic checks, all the rest of it. This is being rolled out, and it's being rolled out very quickly. So, for instance, you've got people who are not allowed to board planes and trains because their social credit score is far too low.
So this is the kind of thing, since our ruling class pays such close attention to human rights abuses abroad, and we're always worried about Myanmar and what are they doing to journalists in Moscow. I mean, this seems like a glaring civil rights violation, human rights violation. Why do we never hear anything about it from the self-appointed moral watchdogs atop our society?
That's a great question, and I actually don't know the answer for it, because this is the biggest human rights abuse in the world today. And we have China putting people basically into internment camps in northwestern China. 1 million people. This is a crime against humanity. We don't hear about that either. And the thing that I think we will hear about it is when they roll out this system for foreigners. So we know that the Chinese government is tracking Chinese in the United States. They are actually contacting people in the U.S. This is just going to get worse and worse until the U.S. government pushes back.
What about the tech companies, our tech companies that exert so much social control over our society? Have they issued an unequivocal statement against this, or do we suspect they sympathize with this idea?
I think they probably sympathize with it because they sold much of the technology to the Chinese that they've used, incorporated into their system. Now, of course, the Chinese have been able to improve what they've gotten, but nonetheless, they would not be anywhere near their level of perfection if it weren't for U.S. and other Western companies.
I mean, do we send them torture equipment, too, for political prisoners? I mean, at some point, can a company do something that's so morally repulsive that there's an outcry about it? I mean, the idea that American tech companies are abetting this garbage is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And also, we've got American companies in Xinjiang, which is that region in northwestern China where you have, the attempt to eradicate the Muslim religion. Well, we have U.S. companies with big operations in Xinjiang, and, they shouldn't be in China anyway, but nonetheless, to be at the site of a human rights violation, which is the worst in the world, it's just indescribable, as you put it.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time the Google guys want to lecture me about my moral shortcomings. Gordon Chang, thank you very much. Great to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.
A professor, a feminist at an overrated and very expensive Northeastern college says that women have, quote, every right to hate men, all men, because men have done women wrong. All women, by all men. Obviously demented, and yet someone who agrees has been located and will join us next.
Your insurance rates skyrocket after a scratch so small you could fix it with a pen. How about using that pen to sign up for new insurance instead?
For drivers with accident forgiveness, Liberty Mutual won't raise their rates because of their first accident.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Keith and Melissa lived next to Melissa's parents. And when it was clear living 30 feet away had to change to living 3,000 miles away, they made the right move and called Pods. So did their not-so-new neighbors. Mom? Pods, the right move for your move.
Hello Window Designs. They're tested from -40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit and subjected to wind-driven rain. They're even engineered to stop hurricane debris from penetrating your home. All with distinctive style that goes beyond the ordinary. Pello Windows and Doors. Perfectly beautiful.
How can we say when you book direct at choicehotels.com, you always get the lowest price in our rooms, guaranteed?
Let's say it in a really low voice.
Carl?
Lowest price guaranteed.
Just stick with bada book, bada boom.
Book now at choicehotels.com.
You wouldn't accept an incomplete job from anyone else. Why accept it from your allergy pills? Flonase Sensimist relieves all your worst symptoms, including nasal congestion, which most pills don't. And all from a gentle mist you can barely feel. Flonase Sensimist.
Let your perfect drive come together during the final days of the Lincoln Summer Invitation event. Get 0% APR on select 2018 Lincoln models plus $1,000 bonus cash.
Tonight, Laura Ingraham is back. Powerful debate, smart opinion, and the no-holds-barred conversation you need. You don't want to miss this Ingraham Angle.
This is not a bet. It's a revolution in sleep. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is on sale now from $8.99 during Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year. It senses your movement and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It even helps with this. So you wake up ready to put your pedal to the metal. And now all beds are on sale. Save 50% on the new Sleep Number 360 Limited Edition Smart Bed, plus 24-month financing on all beds, only for a limited time. Sleep Number, proven quality sleep.
I was right out of college and I was starting job interviews and I already noticed that my teeth were starting to shift. When I heard of Smile Direct, I was so excited.
Let Smile Direct Club give you a smile you'll love for 60% less than braces by sending invisible aligners direct to you. Plus, we straighten most smiles in an average of 6 months.
So convenient. You don't have to go to an orthodontist every month. You can go into a smile shop. They also have a kit that they can ship directly to your house. There's really no excuse to not try it.
Get started for 60% less at SmileDirectClub.com.
My name is Jeff Sheldon, and I'm the founder of UgMonk. Before ShipStation, it was crazy. Like, it's great when you see, 100 orders come in, but then you realize I got 100 orders that I actually have to ship out. ShipStation streamlined that whole process. The order data, the weights of the items, everything is seamlessly put into ShipStation. So when we print the shipping label, everything's pretty much done. It's so much easier. So now we're ready, bring on the orders.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Not getting enough cash back with that credit card? Turn to the nerds. Want to invest that bonus? Turn to the nerds. Looking for the perfect mortgage? Turn to the nerds. Oops, sorry about that. Hey there, need a travel rewards card? Turn. Auto loan? 2. Want a lower interest rate? The nerds. The experts at NerdWallet make it easy to make smart money moves. Compare credit cards, mortgages, savings accounts, and more at nerdwallet.com.
Well, here's the non-shocking story of the week. The chair of the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies Department at Northeastern University feels what she calls legitimate rage against men, all men, and believes that it, quote, makes sense for women to have rage against a group of people that has systematically abused them, she said non-grammatically. In a Washington Post opinion piece, the professor demanded that men stop running for political office, said men shouldn't be in charge of anything anyway. After all, she wrote, we have every right to hate you. Jason Nichols is a professor at the University of Maryland, and he joins us today. Professor, great to see you.
Great seeing you.
Why is it that we turn our children over to the care of the least happy, least mentally stable, least impressive people in our society? Is there anyone unhappier than this woman, do you think, in America?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, she has the right to say what she's saying.
For sure she does, and I'll defend it.
And she has, we have a big attack on academic freedom. We have to stand up for people to have the right to say certain things, even if we disagree with them. Now, I think a lot of what she's saying is actually
correct. If I was taking her class, and I took some women's studies courses in college because I wanted an easy grade, and they're so dumb, it's not hard as long as you hate yourself.
Absurd.
But if I
come to Maryland and take one of those women's studies courses.
But let me be honest. If I stood up and said, I am a man, and how dare you attack all men on a collective basis, how do you think I would do in her class?
I think you would do fine.
Right.
The reason being, show me her evaluations. Are students out there saying, Professor Walters, I believe her name is, Professor Walters mistreated me because...
Well, I don't know. The whole system is opaque. You can't get those data.
We're getting into hypotheticals.
Of course we are. But if she stood up and said, I dislike fill in the blank, some ethnic group. Right. Polynesians. I was mugged by a Polynesian. I hate them. I have every right to hate them. If you're a Polynesian kid, I think you would have a right to say, gee, can I be treated fairly in this class? That's a reasonable thing
But again, that's apples and oranges. You know that men are the people who are in power. When we look at Fortune 500 companies, 4.5% of Fortune 500 companies have women CEOs.
What does that have to do with anything?
And women are the majority.
The most powerful country in Europe is a woman. I mean, I guess that's the point, actually, that I would make.
And we've never had female leadership.
Is that you can't and you shouldn't ever make collective judgments about people on the basis of things they can't control. Their sex.
Yeah, but so what is the judgment that she's making? She's saying that patriarchy exists, that women are oppressed by men. Those things are true.
But not all women are oppressed by men. That's a lie. And it's also a sign of mental illness to really believe that.
So you don't believe that
every woman is oppressed by every man? That's like demented.
So you
need
don't
help
know.
If you think that.
No one ever said that every woman was oppressed by every man. She's saying that patriarchy is a system that has existed for hundreds of years in which women are suppressed. And again, I can give you many examples, not only in our society, but in societies around the world.
It's very hard for me not to keep on with the invective because she's so dumb that it shocks me she could teach in a college, okay? But I will set that aside and ask, if you believe that, how can you occupy a paying job at a university that a woman should be sitting in?
Well, again, I think that I didn't agree with everything she said in that op-ed.
Okay, but if you want to fight the patriarchy, look,
I think there are ways to fight patriarchy.
How about resign and give your job to a woman?
Where you don't have to resign and give jobs.
But wouldn't that be pretty effective?
I think one of the effective ways to do it is to recognize and be willing to accept female leadership. That's what she's really saying.
No, I think what she's really saying is you should resign.
I don't think that's what she's saying.
The patriarchy is real. and give your job to a woman.
No, I don't think that that's what she's saying. And the argument should be systemic. That's where I actually had an issue with what it was she was saying.
Every man is the same. Just like every member of any ethnic group is not the same. But every
man needs to recognize women and be open to female leadership, which many men are not. And that's the problem.
I think that women should be open to treating men as individuals and not as a group.
Yeah, I think that has happened historically, but right now we need for men to be open to female
when
leadership.
you resign, call me. Professor, great to see you.
Yeah, I'll call you for a job. How about that?
Greg Gutfeld thinks our robot overlords are coming, and he applauds their arrival. He's here next to explain.
Hi there. This is a commercial about insurance.
I know you're thinking, I don't want to hear about insurance.
Because let's be honest, nobody likes dealing with insurance, right? Which is why Esurance hired me, Dennis Quaid, as their spokesperson, because apparently I'm highly likable.
I like Dennis Quaid.
Aw. And they want me to let you know that, cue over dramatic music, they're on a mission to make insurance painless.
Excuse me. Did you drop this?
They know it's confusing.
I literally have no idea what I'm getting, Dennis Quaid.
That's why they're making it simple. Man and Cafe. And they know it's expensive.
Yeah.
So they're making